Good morning, everybody. There's a lot going on out there, so let's get to it. We've had a lot of clients calling in saying, Greg, Walt, what's going on with gold? It just keeps going up. Is it time to sell? The answer to that is no. I believe this has legs to it, and I'll give you kind of three reasons on how we are where we are right now, and then Walt will kind of tie it all together. So first, the history lesson. Most of you know we used to be on a gold standard, and the dollar was backed by gold. Now, how come? Well, after World War II, America had a whole bunch of gold, and we needed to rebuild a financial system following World War II to rebuild the world. So here's what happened. In the 1930s and the early 1940s, we saw two major wars break out. First, the war in Europe, which we stayed out of at the beginning, but Hitler swept through Europe and conquering armies take the gold. Same thing was happening over in Asia. The Japanese swept through Asia. They took the gold. 5 years later came the Americans. Did we leave the gold there? No, we took it. At the end of World War II, at Fort Knox, West Point, and the Denver Mint, we boasted of 22,000 tons of gold in the United States. By some estimates, 75% of all the gold that had ever been mined in the history of the world was here. So the money men of the world got together in a small town in New Hampshire, and I've told this story before, but some of you haven't heard this, called Bretton Woods. It's kind of like Ruidoso. Nice town, big hotel. It wasn't a conspiracy thing. And they said, we need a financial system post-war. America's going to have an intact industrial base. They didn't get bombed to smithereens, and the Americans will have all the gold. Therefore, they said, the dollar will be backed by gold. Every other currency in the world will mark to the dollar. Thus came the sayings, the dollar is as good as gold, solid as a dollar. Harry Truman signed it, front page of the New York Times, and this was our system. Until the 1960s, it was working pretty well. And then, and this will tie together to today, you'll see in just a second, Lyndon Johnson wanted to do two things. He wanted to kill the commies in Vietnam, and he wanted to launch the Great Society, Medicare, Medicaid, all of the expansion of Social Security, all of that. We didn't have enough money to do that. Or better said, we didn't have enough gold to do that. We just started printing up the money. So under the terms of the agreement back at Bretton Woods in the 40s, you could exchange dollars for gold. And this is what the world began to do. So in the late 60s, early 70s, we have stories of our Treasury officials weeping at the ports as we loaded gold onto ships to go back to Asia, to go back to Europe. By 1971, we were down to 8,500 tons of gold from 22,000. Now, that's when Richard Nixon went on national TV and he abrogated the gold standard. He said the dollar's no longer backed by gold. It was supposed to be temporary. Of course, that was over 50 years ago. So why bring that up now? Well, something happened starting in January of 23 that came to fruition in July of this year. It was called the Basel III Agreement. Basel is in Basel, Switzerland. And what is in Basel, Switzerland is the Bank for International Settlements. We've talked about this before. They're the central bank of the central banks around the globe. And what they said was this. In January of 23, they said, look, we're going to reintroduce gold as a tier one asset, tier like TIER, top grade, riskless collateral for global trade. It will be side by side with the dollar, which before that, the dollar had been the only pristine, risk-free collateral on the planet. And they said this will be complete by July of this year, 2025. We started to see the slow upward movement in January of 23, the trading pattern changed. And now it's really started to take off in our favor now that it's official. So why is this happening? Well, it's a little bit like LBJ and guns and butter. We are spending more money than what we have by a lot. And I'll close with this so you understand the magnitude of this. 3 quarters ago, it took us 113 days to add 1 trillion to the debt. right? 2 quarters ago, it took us 90 days to add $1 trillion to the debt. Trillions a lot of money. Last quarter, it took us 79 days to add $1 trillion to the debt. And now I've got the government shut down. We'll see what this does to things. But you can see what this is on a chart. Our debt's just going straight up. It's very similar to the problem Nixon was having back in the early 70s. You can redeem dollars for gold. And if the world says, you guys, you're printing way more money than what gold you have left at Fort Knox, West Point, and the Denver Mint, we're going to start redeeming more. So will we see we're at 8,133 tons is what we say. Are we going to see a run on the bank? This is the concern. And I think this is one of the reasons all these reasons together, why you're seeing the price of gold rise. Now, to tie all this together in a better bow, let me turn it over to Walt.